I'd like to begin today by thanking Senator Murray. She offered some kind words for me at our hearing on Tuesday. Let me say something about her. 4 years ago, she and I received the National Education Association's Friend of Education Award. It was the first time in 30 years the NEA had awarded that award to a Republican, but it was the second time in 4 years that they'd awarded it to Senator Murray. So we would seem like an unlikely pair. But there's a little secret to our relationship. Senator Murray was a preschool teacher, and my mother had a kindergarten in our backyard where she had 25 3- and 4-year-olds in the morning and 25 5-year-olds in the afternoon for 30 years. And I was there for almost every year until I was 6. So Senator Murray and I have found a lot of common ground in what you learn in preschool, which was the childhood lesson of play well together. An indispensable part of our success has been Staff Director Evan Schatz and David Cleary, my staff director, as well as other members of the Murray staff and the Alexander staff who've also learned to work well together and made it easier for us to succeed. Our staff affectionately calls them the Murrays. The laws that we've passed in this committee over the past 6 years, when I've been chairman, she's been the ranking member, wouldn't have happened without Senator Murray, whose leadership and effectiveness helped yield, for example, the Every Student Succeeds Act. President Obama called that a Christmas miracle. It affects 100,000 public schools and 50 million children. Or the 21st Century Cures Act, Senator McConnell called that, which passed in 2016, the most important law of the entire Congress, speeding up life-saving cures for diseases from Alzheimer's to cancer to flu. It's been helpful in driving research for COVID-19. Then there's the Opioid Response Crisis Act of 2018 and the Future Act of last year, when we began the process of simplifying the dreaded FAFSA by law and permanently funded historically black colleges, a goal for a long time. And there have been many more, including the Perkins Law and other important laws. Senator Murray has been extraordinarily effective, partly because she's a member of the Democratic leadership, and she commands great respect on her side of the aisle. But she also knows how to create an environment in which bills can become law, which requires bipartisan action. For example, when she and I first began the work on fixing No Child Left Behind, she said that what we should do is write the bill together. Well, that hadn't been my plan, but I took her advice. Turned out to be good advice, and we got a result that not many people thought we would get. That bill had many complicated and contentious issues. There were crocodiles at every part of the pond. But Senator Murray helped find creative ways to conquer those challenges and proceed to the finish. One of the most special times for me in my 18 years in the Senate was on April 16, 2015, when we called the roll on the Every Student Succeed Act. And this committee, of so many different points of view, every single senator voted yes to recommend that bill to the Senate. That type of bipartisan support never would have happened without Patty Murray. We've had some disappointments. We've certainly had some differences of opinion, but Senator Murray's always been willing to sit down and try to find a path forward, even on the most contentious issues. I often say it's hard to get to the United States Senate. It's hard to stay here, and while you're here, you might as well try to accomplish something good for the country. Senator Murray's that kind of senator, the kind that's here to get something done. And Americans are fortunate that the result has been new laws to tackle the opioid crisis, spur new cures for diseases, to make it easier to attend and afford college, and to help 50 million children in 100,000 public schools. So I thank her for her friendship, for her partnership, and her leadership on some of the most important issues of our time. And now let's turn our attention to one of those important issues, and it is this: 20 million students and their families are in the middle of what has to be the strangest first semester of college in at least a century. Almost everything has changed for students, except one thing. Students still have to answer 108 questions on the dreaded FAFSA form, the federal aid application for Pell Grants and student loans to help go to college. For years now, I've carried around the FAFSA as a prop to make the case for simplifying it. But it's no joke, especially this year. Many students are questioning their investment in a college education at a time when many classes are only offering online courses. Many of low-income students who would benefit most economically from college long-term are putting it off altogether. There was already an 8% drop in the number of Black undergraduate students enrolled in summer sessions compared with last summer's enrollment, according to the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. The president of Southwest Tennessee Community College in Memphis, a mostly minority community college, told me a few years ago that he loses 1,500 students a semester because of the complexity of filling out the FAFSA. Imagine how much less motivated anyone is to fill out those 108 FAFSA questions this year. This is a form that is especially difficult for students who are homeless, who are in foster care, who are living with grandparents. It's hard for them to complete it. Homeless students have to prove they're homeless. Foster care students may not have access to all the information required to complete the FAFSA, and students living with their grandparents often are still dependent on their parents, and obtaining information from their parents may be difficult. These are the very students federal aid is meant to help, and it's exactly the kind of economy in which a college education proves its value. It's not that Senator Murray and I and others haven't been trying to help fix the FAFSA. When 4 of today's witnesses appeared before this committee almost 7 years ago, they universally agreed that the FAFSA was an obstacle to students attending college. They said we could award Pell Grants using just 2 simple variables, family size and income. Senator Bennett and I then had the same reaction. Well, if there's that much agreement on how to make it easier for 20 million families to apply for federal aid, why don't we just do it? So Senator Bennett and I set out to turn the lengthy FAFSA into a postcard. The result was the FAST Act. Senator Murray and I then worked with the Obama administration to allow students to fill out the FAFSA using their tax information from 2 years before they enroll in college, instead of 1, so they could file in the fall rather than having to wait until spring. The Trump administration has created an app so students and families can file the FAFSA on their cell phones or tablets. The Future Act, which Senator Murray and I sponsored, and which became law last year, reduced the FAFSA by up to 22 questions and eliminated the bureaucratic nightmare created by requiring students to give the federal government the same information twice and then to try to catch them in making a mistake. Stopping the federal government from asking for your tax information twice, once for the IRS and then once for the Education Department, also helps prevent most applicants from being selected by the Department of Education for income verification caused by mistakes, which many parents and counselors have told me is a bigger burden than filling out the 108 questions in the first place. So today we've got a piece of legislation that would finish the job. It has broad bipartisan support. It's based on recommendations that 4 of today's witnesses gave us nearly 7 years ago at a hearing before this committee. Here's what I mean when I say it's time to finish the FAFSA. The bipartisan legislation Senator Jones and I have proposed would reduce the total questions on the FAFSA from 108 to no more than 33. So let me give you an example of the difference, if I can hold it up. This is the 108 questions. This is the 33 question form that would make the difference if we could enact it this year. That's the first thing it would do. Second, it would end the Department of Education's lengthy financial data verification process by removing unnecessary financial questions and instead using only the financial data that will come directly from the IRS starting in 2023-24 school year. a change that Congress made in the Future Act, which passed last year and which I just mentioned. 3, it will continue to collect and provide states and colleges with the information they need to determine state and institutional aid. The first legislation that Senator Bennett and I worked on caused some problems for states, and we've worked with states and, and counselors to address those problems. 4, it would create a simple Pell Grant eligibility formula so that middle and high school students and anyone interested in applying for aid will know how much Pell Grant money they have to go to college. 5, it does something else, something that Senator Murray has been working on for 20 years, that makes it easier for students who are homeless, students in the foster system, or students who are not in touch with their parents. Our bill allows these students to apply for aid as independent students, making the application process for them much simpler. As a result of these changes, Congress would immediately enable more students to receive Pell Grants and many more to receive the maximum Pell Grant. An additional 420,000 students would qualify for Pell Grants each year if this bill passed, according to the Congressional Budget Office. An additional 1.6 million students would qualify to receive the maximum Pell Grant award each year. Students from single-parent families would benefit more from Pell Grants because the formula would account for the greatest needs of these families. And in addition to Senator Murray, much of this work has been done by Senator Bennett, Senator Jones, who's a member of this committee, and others who have helped with the work include Senator Booker, Senator Burr of this committee, Senator Collins of this committee, Senator King, and former Senator Isaacson. During these last several years, we've worked carefully with various organizations to make sure our proposals don't cause any unexpected problems, and as a result, we have the support of the National Association for Student Aid Administrators, the National College Attainment Network, the State Higher Education Executive Officers Organization, Schoolhouse Connections, National Association of State Student Grant Aid Programs, each of the regional higher education compacts. In conclusion, after nearly 7 years of work on these issues, it all boils down to this. It makes no sense to make it this complicated to apply for federal aid for college. It makes no sense to discourage the very students Congress wants to encourage to attend college and benefit from federal financial aid. In Tennessee, former Governor Bill Haslam created the Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Reconnect programs to provide 2 years of free community college to any Tennessean without a degree. All they have to do is fill out the FAFSA. Yet Governor Haslam told me that the FAFSA is the single biggest barrier to helping more Tennesseans take advantage of the opportunity for 2 free years of higher education. The right time to finish the job is now, a time when college students and their families are under so much pressure, facing so much uncertainty, especially homeless students, students in foster care, and those living with grandparents. I hope we can pass bipartisan legislation to do so by the end of this year. I will now recognize Senator Murray for her opening statement.